Hi, welcome to the channel. Today we have Andrew, who's the principal of William Ruthven Secondary College. Welcome.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to begin by asking, how did you become principal of the school?
Okay, so I think the first part would be to go back and look at how I got into education. I sort of fell into education, so to speak. Went to my local high school, completed year 12, enjoyed my time at high school probably a little bit too much. Back then when you got your ATAR, or I think it was called a TER back then, so I'm showing my age. Once they were released, I went to my careers advisor and said, this is my TER. What do you think I'd be able to get into? I was interested to go to university. I had a real strong sporting background. So we looked at teaching. I remember having the conversation with my mother, who was a very good advocate for me to go into teaching. She said, you worked really well with younger children, you're really patient, you build a rapport with people quite well, you've got good social skills, all of those sorts of things. So that was probably the avenue and the conversation that started me down on my educational journey. Attended university for 4 years, and then you come out after 4 years, and that first time that you stand in front of kids is pretty daunting. But that was the start of my career, and I guess now that being a principal, at the start of my career, there was no way that I ever envisaged that I would be a principal. But throughout the journey, obviously different opportunities have come up. Lucky enough to have travelled overseas and taught in the UK, and had different other experiences in Canada and America, still working with adolescents and working with young people. It was more of a coaching and mentoring role.
So you reckon travelling helps you figure out, a career pathway?
I know that a lot of the younger generation now, they take a gap year. I think that wouldn't have suited me. I think if I had taken a gap year, I would never have gone to university. And it's different horses for courses, as the saying goes. I think travelling matured me, obviously stretched me, took me out of my comfort zone, took me into a completely different system, educational system. I'd only been teaching, I think, 2 or 3 years in the Australian education system. When I decided that I wanted to travel, so you probably 2 or 3 years learning the curriculum here, and then you uproot and go and live overseas. It matures you, and you have to grow up pretty quickly. Learning another system again, like curriculum system, it was completely different to the Victorian curriculum system. I think for me it did, and I think it was beneficial. I still talk about it now with our students, reference it in a positive light because it was a positive experience for me. And I would encourage students that if that's what they would like to do, to go and do it and to follow their passion. But for me personally, I think it helped develop me as a person, and I think it also helped develop me in my career pathway.
Yeah. Should we explain to the audience about the gap year? Because we're in Melbourne, Australia, and so I'm sure in other parts of the world they refer to time off. They have probably a different name.
So it's a new reference. It's probably not a new reference, it's been around for a while, but the gap year just means you're going to take 12 months off from going into either university, or you might go into an apprenticeship, or whatever your pathway is going to be. It's 12 months where you might work, travel, do all of the things that you think you want to do before you start your career, because I think I'm trying to think of the right word, the going into your career, you're going to focus so much on your career that you think you're not going to have that balance of work-life.
Yeah. And what does your day-to-day look like as a principal?
My day-to-day...
Is it stressful? Is it full-on? Is it every minute?
It's different. It's different each day. It can vary from dealing with parents, dealing with students, dealing with staff, community liaison, around dealing with finance and budgets. It really is a mix of everything.
Off camera, I think you mentioned to me about how daunting it is to speak in front of, the whole entire assembly or something. So is public speaking something that you...
Public speaking has never been something that's been natural for me.
Oh, lucky you.
It's never been natural for me. I don't know many people that thoroughly enjoy it. It's not natural.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the more you're exposed to it, the better and more comfortable you become around public speaking. As I said, off camera, I've got a real sporting background, so I've been involved in football and cricket and those types of things, which I think have lent or allowed me to have informal public speaking. But my job is probably more formal public speaking, so you make talks in front of, or you make presentations in front of staff, you make presentations in front of parents, community members, your colleagues. So it's not uncommon that you'll go to a principal's forum and you have to actually present to other colleagues. You just learn to be calm and learn to be present in what you're going to deliver and how you're going to deliver it. As I say to our students here or any young adolescents, it's not something that necessarily comes natural, but as the experiences come, you'll learn to deal with them on a daily basis if that becomes part of your work.
So now I had a quick read on the website of the school. So this school's been established since 2010, yeah?
Yep.
So it's a fairly new school. So since you've come on board, is there anything that you think is different to how you want to take the school compared to other schools?
It's a good question, Mel. I think since I've been here, we've had a redevelopment, and the redevelopment, we were lucky enough to have an $11 million redevelopment for quite a small secondary school. That allowed us to build innovative spaces within our buildings. So when you go for a walk around our school, we've got a lot of indoor-outdoor opportunities, a lot of flexible learning spaces. When I went into the profession, it was very silo orientated, as in staff would work in their own little areas. There wasn't a great deal of collaboration. That's changed substantially, which is great. Because if we're preparing adolescents to enter into the workforce, I think you've really got to look at what skill set they're going to need moving forward. The shapes of the buildings have changed to allow that, so they're not just rows of boxes. I know that our students don't sit in rows anymore. That was really strongly related to the Industrial Revolution. They have round tables to promote collaboration. We encourage peer teaching. That wouldn't have been allowed in my day. It was a real silent area when I was a student. Now there's more, you hope there's a bit more of a buzz and a bit more of a noise. You hope that they're actually conversing about the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I've noticed
not
that. Not
talking about the weekend.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's screens in each collaborative space, which is pretty cool because you can do presentations on them.
Yeah, so our school is a BYOD school, which is pretty common now. So that's just to bring your own device, trying to get that blend between technology and semi-traditional model. Pen and paper, our students still use pen and paper. They still write essays, they still do mathematical calculations, they do all of those sorts of things. It's just integrating the technology into it. And I think we're going into a really interesting space around AI and how that's going to look.
Wow,
and how that can support education, because it's not going anywhere. And I think if you look back probably 20 years ago, we were talking about calculators and how do we use calculators in the classroom. I think it's really important that that is around the person using the technology and around the reasoning and the understanding of what they're doing with the technology.
Okay, so is homework submitted via a digital device like a iPad?
It's a balance. So it's a balance between written homework that would be submitted, as opposed to it could be emailed, it could be attached to what we use, a platform called Compass, which is the interface between the school and the community and the parents. So a lot of the formal work that students submit is done through Compass. And Compass is another way that parents and students can email staff. Email the principal, email our leadership team. That doesn't mean we still don't want them to pick up the phone and have a conversation. More than welcome to do that. But it's just another dynamic way of having that communication, open line of communication with our community.
And no doubt COVID made an impact, right? And the transitioning of teaching online.
COVID was a really interesting period. Like I think it intensified the use of technology and how we use technology. So for instance, we're an Office 365 school. We had all of our meeting schedules we did via WebEx. A lot of our work was pushed out through Teams or OneNote. So it probably intensified and sped up the process of technology and making it a useful tool. It still didn't supplement face-to-face teaching. I found it interesting. There was a conversation with some colleagues the other week around, and my regional manager around the increase in VSV, which is Virtual Schools of Victoria. There's been a large increase in the number of enrolments, and I think that's a byproduct of COVID, because students realised that they felt comfortable to learn and to progress their learning virtually, and that's fine. Other students didn't enjoy it, didn't like it, knew it wasn't the mode that they wanted to learn through. What we did notice coming out of it was there was a lot of emotional regulation that needed to be recalibrated.
Because it must be hard trying to teach science, like chemistry, via a Zoom session or a WebEx. How would the teacher go, oh, we are now mixing,
this is where I don't think you can substitute it. You'd have to find a clip that would demonstrate it. And staff out there throughout, across, I know, Metro Victoria, or Melbourne, did an amazing job. Like they were very resilient, very flexible. They found different ways to present information and to do some of those experiments. And also being mindful of how COVID was affecting people. Like we know that coming out of COVID, there was a really increase in mental health and what that looked like, and just identifying and supporting people with those issues. It's not a period that we want to revisit. I think though, but I think we've really taken some leaps forward in the educational sector that will keep us in good stead. An example of that might be we now run our school council meetings in a hybrid model. So there's the ability to come into the school, still and have the meeting, but also to be online, have the meeting.
Yep.
That's probably one of the changes that we've been able to make, and just utilising how we utilised Compass, posting work on Compass so that students can access it via that portal, and submit work via that portal, which they've always been able to do, but it became more prevalent.
And so do the teachers mark the homework via Compass as well? So they'll comment?
So they would give the feedback, they can give the feedback via Compass, or they would sit down and have a one-to-one conference with students, and that's where that face-to-face is really prevalent and really important. That way they can unpack the feedback with the student, which I think is really important. Another area that obviously education is starting to go into another direction is around developmental rubrics and how they look, and that's really important for student agency and around the feedback and students knowing where they currently sit on the continuum and where they need to go on the continuum of the next areas of learning, skill-based or content-based.
So you reckon, because it's year 7 to year 12, and before the keyword was peer teaching, right? Is that within the same year level? So students that are outstanding can deliver information to other students that need a bit more assistance? Or is it higher level students teaching junior school?
There's multiple facets to that. It is interesting. It could be, you could have, if you're in a collaborative space, it could be a higher student teaching a lower student. You could have students that are really close in ability level, really working together and actually imparting their knowledge and understanding and reasoning on why they're doing things and how things work. It's a really interesting concept. I know that some schools do vertical streaming, which means you could have students from year 7 to year 10 in subjects. Or even in VCE, you might do an early start with VCE. You could have a year 9 or a year 10 student that does an early start in VCE. So it really just comes back to the philosophy of the school and how that looks. But I think in the education sector, I think we're getting better at realising that peer teaching is a good opportunity for students to work together, to collaborate, and to impart their knowledge and understanding and reasoning on their peers.
I think it's a good idea to have that option in the school because it almost prepares tertiary level studies. Because in Australia, in Melbourne, unis, there are assignments that expect the students to collaborate in groups.
Look, there's also the element of in the workforce. If I don't know something, I'm going to go to a peer or someone I am comfortable with to ask them questions, to clarify, to say, I don't know how this works, or how does this work? Can you sit down with me? Can you work our way through it? And that's been a real development probably in the last decade, that ability to collaborate with other people, to co-design curriculum together, that it's using appropriate data to pitch to the level of the students. So I think collaboration is probably what in the last 10 years has been one of the big buzzwords that we use not only in education but I think in the workforce as well.
Okay, so as a principal of the school, can you choose the curriculum, or it's more like teachers give you feedback, or is it the government?
The government sets our curriculum.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of interpreting the curriculum, how you want to design and deliver the curriculum. Probably an example of that is the reform of VCAL into a vocational major. So that's been rolled out this year. It's the first year that we've moved from VCAL to VM. So there's been a whole redesign of the curriculum, and that's allowed students to still gain their VCE certificate So this year will be the first graduates of vocational major, VCE, Victorian Certificate of Education, which is fantastic. So I think, in short, to answer your question, the government sets it, but I think it comes back to how innovative and how well the staff can work together to implement an engaging and collaborative curriculum for the students, for adolescents, so that they are prepared for the workforce.
Yep. Is there any collaborations with other schools at this stage?
I think it comes back to how collegial principals are. Recently, we had a shared provision of a VCE class across 2 secondary schools. We didn't have enough students for a specific subject. It was history. A local school didn't have enough students for history. We came together, we pooled our resources, we utilised that the students would be able to transport to our setting, use our teacher at that point in time. Things like that, if you have really great colleagues and you're able to think innovatively on how you can get the best outcome for students, the sky can be the limit, so to speak. So that was something that we were able to do. If you can negotiate or you can liaise with other principals to do that, and you've got more students doing subjects that they want to do, I think good luck to the principals that can do that.
Yep, okay. So for the year 11, year 12 students that's preparing themselves for future career pathways or uni studies, does the school allocate times or tours, or they have to do the research themselves to unis?
All schools will have a careers advisor, and that's now attached to a specific certificate that the career advisor has to do. So they would have a really solid understanding of what pathways are available for students. That's probably been the change, I think, in the last probably 5 or 6 years that we're talking about pathways. So in whatever your pathway looks like, my pathway was a traditional pathway. So it was finish school, went to university, went into my career. That can be completely different. So now it could be finish school, went into a TAFE course, transfer into university, into employment. It could be complete VCE, complete a vet in Cert 2 and Cert 3, go into an apprenticeship. The pathway for every student can be different, and just because it takes you longer to find your career doesn't mean it's a bad thing, or the journey. I think it's more about the journey now.
Yeah, I think sometimes you got to figure yourself out and then give it a solid attempt, but it's okay to switch.
I think that's probably
if you can juggle more than
the biggest thing that we talk about now in regards to careers are like my grandparents. They were in industry for 40 years, didn't change industry. My parents chopped and changed a little bit, but still there was that 20 or 30 years in a career or an industry or even an establishment. I don't see this next generation necessarily being in the same job at the same company for 50 years.
Like 9 to 5,
or not even the same. They won't work for the one organisation for 50 years. Gold watch. They won't get the gold watch. That's bad luck. But they'll get the experience. So I think and that's really important, because we're recognising that a lot of skills are transferable. So the skills are transferable, the content of what so if you manage people, the content or the context that you manage people can change. If you can manage people really, really well, your context or the organisation can change.
What's the most difficult part of your role that you think? I know you mentioned it does vary every day.
Yeah,
it's like...
I think the complexity of being across a lot of different things. But then we're lucky that we're working for the department. There's a lot of agencies that you lean upon, or resources that you have. So, like for instance, we have a legal team. So if there's something that say you've got court orders that need to be looked at, you have a legal team that would look at that, and then they advise you what the court order is actually stating and what you can and can't do. HR, so human resources, how do you go through like the employment process, make sure that you're employing people under merit and equity. So like I said, there's many facets to the job, and knowing and having the right support around it, which the department is quite good at now, and knowing and getting the right advice in a timely manner is essential.
Do you often have to touch base or submit reports to government, or you just get the curriculum at the beginning of the year and then you have a little bit of flexibility?
So the accountability, there's accountability to the department, there's accountability to your community. Every year you put out a report to your community. It's discussed and at your annual general meeting at school council. So there's accountability in that regard. Every 4 years you go through a review cycle, which is done by an external provider by the department. So it's outsourced to external providers. You then come up with a strategic plan, and then every year of that strategic plan, so every year of the 4 years, you develop an annual implementation plan that will focus on specific areas of your strategic plan.
Does a school get audited? Like, say, for example, the budget, or if you were to apply for more funding, how would that work?
Your funding and your budgeting is according to your student numbers. It depends also on what you can apply for grants and those sorts of things. You can liaise with the VSBA and that's another thing that you talk about. Like, you talk to politicians about funding and next stages of building and all of those wonderful things. Once again, that's more complexity around the job, around another area that you have to work with different community providers, different community members. So it's the complexity of the job is interesting.
Like, growing up, I had so much respect for teachers, and that's just teachers, right? But you having to sort of liaise between so many stakeholders, you've got students, teachers, parents, plus the government, plus politicians. Oh my goodness, must be hard. It must be hard to keep everything smooth sailing. Because do you think
not everything that does go smooth sailing?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. What if it overrides? What if teachers have given you a report and it's a little bit different to government standards?
Okay.
How would you resolve, or do you have a little bit of flexibility? Does a school have flexibility?
Yeah, there's flexibility. Like there's professional flexibility, but once again, it'll come back to your strategic plan. It'll come back to your annual implementation plan. They're the things that you're accountable to. Ultimately, we're accountable to our community. So as long as you continue to do the right thing and in the best interest of the students, I think your community will always support you.
Do you think it's a prerequisite for principals to have prior teaching knowledge? Because I know off camera you told me about that you taught, and then you thoroughly enjoyed that, right? So I think it probably helps,
I think
for you to transition into
I think there's a
leadership role.
natural. The teaching component of it was always an enjoyable part of it for me. It's probably one of the biggest things that I do miss, actually being in a classroom, asking questions for students around how do you do that, why do you do that, like the higher order questions, and really just building rapport with students. That's a really important thing, because if you're going to stretch students, they've got to feel safe to make and take risks. And that's where I think good teaching allows that to happen. So I was always a big advocate for school camps and those opportunities outside of the classroom to try and integrate them, and how do you support them to be integrated into the classroom. So if you're asking a student to abseil down a 3 metre rock face and they're telling you they can't do it, and then you are able to get them to achieve that, and then you're sitting in that same student, you're having a conversation around Pythagoras' theorem and they can't do it, or I don't know how to do this, you can draw that correlation and say, remember when you couldn't abseil down that rock face and you were really, really scared, and I get that. I want you to trust me. Trust me, we will get through this.
Wow, that's that just brought back memories for me. Teachers, I remember physics was just like so difficult. It was something that you really had to think about, because it's not like every day you come across atoms, right? I remember teachers trying to explain atoms to me. I was just like, I can't see it, like, why do I need to learn atoms? But my physics teacher was great, and made it a bit more appealing.
Yeah, some of it's great really to see teachers passionate about what they teach. And that, I think, can invoke curiosity in students and engage students. And the hard part now is, how do you relate it all to real life? So that's what a lot of students will say, well, where am I going to use this and how am I going to use this? So trying to get that balance of, you need your basic arithmetic, you need your basic numeracy and literacy skills. How am I going to use this in a real life context, and drawing that context into the classroom.
So your staff, so your teachers, can you send them overseas for conferences or learning to other countries? So having, extra coaching for teachers, but not just based in Melbourne. It's more like to learn from other education systems abroad. Is that encouraged in?
It's
in the
probably
current
it
climate?
it would depend on the organisation, and it would depend on the funding that you would have, or your budget that you would have, to enable that. I know that we talk more about developing capacity of our staff internally. So utilising coaching and mentoring strategies within our organisation, and also developing community of practice, so in your local area. I guess the hard part is where you're going to fund it from. So I don't think the department would fund that necessarily. So we probably take an approach more around internally and locally developing the capacity of staff.
So if you were Year 12, finishing up, and looking to get into the education sector, do you have any advice to give students that are looking to go down?
It's a good question. I think in the current market in education, I know that talking across Victoria and possibly across Australia, there's a shortage. There's a teacher shortage or an education shortage. If you're passionate about it, definitely get into it. If it's if you're doing it because you think you get lots of holidays and those types of things that you hear people talk about, you're probably not getting in it for the right reason. I think there's going to be some job security over the next decade and beyond, which is a byproduct of COVID. There's a shortage, I guess, across a lot of industries. Education is not immune to that and not different from that. I think there'll be some really good opportunities for young, vibrant educators to come in and to make a difference. The world is your oyster. It really depends on what you want to do. If you get out what you put in. So if you want to have a long career in education, immerse yourself in the industry, immerse yourself in different schools, different contexts, whether it be rural or metropolitan. Learn the craft, develop and learn from people in the industry. And in general, just enjoy your journey. You don't know where you're going to end up. As I said at the start of this, there was no way that I thought like leaving high school, that I would be the principal of a high school. I have no doubt if you went back and interviewed my high school teachers, they would be fascinated that I'm a principal of a high school. There's opportunity there if you want it. So that would be my advice. The opportunity's there if you want it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. Thank you for your time, and thank you for showing me around the school. I'm curious to see the school under your management the next few years. I'm sure, we'll see the further changes if there are.
I'm curious too. So I think, thanks for the opportunity to share my journey and obviously my thoughts around education. I think it's a really interesting period of time that we're going to go through. And for young people, you've got a really good opportunity to dive into a career space that is going to be well supported.
And yes, so for Victoria, there are shortages for teaching positions.
More than happy for you to become a teacher. Look me up.
Maybe we should include some links about, I don't know, are there links for particular websites for just teachers, or resources for teachers, or upcoming teachers that wanting to get into the field?
I think go and have a conversation with your careers advisor. Would be the best port of call, and there's different ways of getting into teaching. So we have had teachers that have come across from workplace industry, from trade to be woodwork teachers, from the legal industry to become legal educators, authors, writers to come across and teach English. So it's not just, I guess, young people that can change their career. There's anyone at any stage of their career journey can change.
Oh, and before we wrap up, there's one question I wanted to ask during our conversation before, which is subjects. Because we talked about curriculum, but then we didn't cover what are some of the subjects offered at the school, because it can vary in all of Victoria.
So most of your generalised electives when you get to secondary school are around, it might be design, create, evaluate, which is could be food technology, could be woodwork, could be metalwork, around art, visual communication, drama, a language, and then one of the things that we do that's not necessarily different but specific to what we offer is STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art and mathematics. And once you've had the opportunity to explore those specialised areas within a secondary school, normally around year 9 and 10, you branch into electives, more streamed electives around, it could be, if we're looking at food technology, in the design, create, evaluate, you may have a cafe program that they run, that you look at designing your own menu, learning to cook the menu, you cook the menu, you present that to your class or teachers that come and eat and evaluate your
exciting stuff, like
your menu.
A bit like MasterChef.
I know. It's not dissimilar. And they learn about budgeting and those types of things, and then that leads into, say, either a vet course in hospitality, food hospitality, or it can lead to a VCE in food technology.
Or even like hotels, like that's part of that may be covered if you want to go down.
Yeah, and I think that's what we talk about, that you've had that exposure in year 9 and 10 through your elective program that allows you to make your informed choices around, do you go and do a vocational educational training, which is VET, what we classify as VET, which you come out with a certificate 2 or certificate 3 over the 2 years, and that holds you in good stead to go into industry.
Maybe, do we need to explain to the audience about the difference between certificates to a degree? Traditionally, degrees take a bit more units, so it's longer.
Yeah.
And a bit more extensive level of studying. But certificates are traditionally shorter.
Yeah. So most of your certificates, so from a vocational educational training perspective, a certificate 2 would take you 12 months. So they would do that in year 11. A certificate 3 would be in year 12, and having a certificate 2 and a certificate 3 then allows you to go, the potential to go into an apprenticeship, or you could go and then do a diploma because you've got your pre-certificates to do a diploma. Your diploma might be anywhere from 2 years to 4 years. From that diploma you can then you may be able to transfer into a university course, depending if that's what you wanted to do. So, as I said, every individual's pathway can be different. Some can be similar. As I said at the beginning, my pathway was a traditional pathway where I went school, university, education, into the education industry. But it could have been completely different. I do know people that have gone school, certificate, university, career, and then made mid-career choices to move out of that industry, and that's fine.
Or work experience, and then
your work experience, they normally do it around year 10, which is a great opportunity, and I think a lot of students really should think about what they want to experience, so that when they get into that industry, they get a bit of an insight into what it looks like. As I say to our students or any young adolescent, you might not know what you want to do now, but if you try something and don't like it, you're a step closer to finding something you like.
I think the key is to not shy away, be brave enough to explore.
Yeah, and keep an open mind.
Thank you for your time. So that's a wrap for us. Hope people can get some inspiration from, understanding that you looked at it as a journey, and that, you never thought that you could land in this position. Yeah. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mel.
Yep, cool.